I'm going to launch this wonderful share screen. Boom. There we go. I'll launch our PowerPoint. Get into this discussion with you guys. Hey, Pete, Sue, can you guys see that?
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. The compliments aren't going to get you a pay raise, Pete. You can double your last year's salary, I guess, now that I think about it. That's in the budget, maybe triple even. All right, guys, so interview prep. We've got a professional fella on here who does coaching, and then I'm the peanut gallery. Been through a few interviews in my life, done a lot of interviews, hiring people. Same with Pete. I know Sue's had at least one interview in her life as well. So we'll give you our perspective and the challenges that you guys are going to face if you're transitioning out of the military, and you may even still face these challenges if you've been out like myself for over 20 years. So what we're going to discuss today is, as far as these different topics, these areas, is going to be what to bring, what information to get about the employer, how to research the interviewer, discuss being flexible and open-mindedness, understanding the team environment that you're going to be going into or hopefully going into, and basic interview etiquette. And like always, we've got the chat going live. Sue's usually monitoring that stuff for us. So feel free to throw some questions in there, and we will give you feedback in real time if you're on here live. So first thing, needed supplies. Every single interview, everyone needs these 5 things at a minimum. First and foremost, confidence. If you're not confident about what you're going into, wait until you're confident. You should have a pen or some sort of writing instrument. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, but not all ink in the civilian world is black. Is that still a thing? Red and blue are not allowed, Sue?
It is still a thing.
Okay, all right. So you can use pens. You could probably even I got a check once from Adrian Peterson, the famous football. It was written in purple. So you can be like Purple Jesus and write in purple if you want. A notebook or a piece of paper or whatever. Don't be using your hand. Plus, you might be covering up those tattoos, your fresh ink. So use a piece of paper. How many copies of a resume, Pete? Good idea.
Yeah, I would bring 3 copies of your resume.
There you
and
go.
have them paper clipped so that you don't lose any pages and things like that. Have them on nice crisp paper. Go ahead and spend the money on the ink to get them printed on at the higher quality too.
So they do have resume paper as an available option at these printing places if you don't own your own printer. If you're like me, every time you go to use a printer, the ink is mysteriously dried out, or you get these error messages and you want to throw your computer out the window at least 5-6 times. So I don't know why anybody buys a printer, but HP's got me on at least 10 of them that don't work. And very important is have a handwritten note ready to go before you walk out of the interview, okay? Or at least have the paper.
Thank you note.
Correct, sorry. Thank you note.
No problem. Yeah, it's especially important that it be handwritten because it looks sincere, and you can walk out of that tucked in your folder and then hand that to the administrative person for that particular department, or walk around the corner and drop it in the mail. But it's essential to get yourself above the pack when you're after you depart an interview, to mail that or get that to the person's hands. And this is all part of prep. This should be done before you even embark on the interview.
So review, confidence, have a pen, something to write it down on. A few copies of the resume on good paper, that's nice and clear, and a handwritten thank you note that's either partially filled out or ready to go, or in your briefcase, purse, whatever it happens to be. Next slide. So getting information about your potential employer. So when I was talking to Kevin earlier, one of the things that he said that he had the worst interview ever come in front of him. And his first question was, so what do you know about us? And this individual looked at him and said, I know absolutely nothing about you guys. And I guess that I should have done some interview prep before I came in the door today. So it was the perfect wrong answer. So she did say exactly what she should have done. So I don't know, I might have even been tempted to give this person 10 minutes to go and, you know, do a little digging on us first if I was doing the hiring. But I probably would have just told her to go home at that point, personally. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, it's I gotta think in when you're in Kevin's spot and they blow it right after from the first question onward, how much more enthusiasm can you spend invest in that interview? There's really nothing left to say at that point. And he might even want to. He's perfectly within his rights. It's not unethical or unprofessional to say, you know what, I have clients, I have candidates that I know are waiting that are better prepared, and I'm going to go ahead and consider them. But thanks for coming in. Give her a bus token.
So if you're going to spend a month of your time or more working for an employer, you know, hopefully, you know, 3 to 10 years is a reasonable amount of time to be employed somewhere. You should at least take the time to know what the hell they do at a minimum. I mean, if it's Burger King and you know they make hamburgers, that's one thing. But if it's a consulting services company or something like that, bad idea. So you should understand what the company's vision is. Okay, you should understand how they operate. You should also understand their mission real clear. You know, we've got a lot of big industries here in Minneapolis. Cargill, privately held seed company, you know, their mission is to feed the world. Pretty simple. So if that's not something that you agree with, probably shouldn't be there. You should understand what services they perform in the market. You should have a really good understanding of that. These companies, you know, they're in the dark ages if they don't have this stuff listed on a website. And if they don't have a website or the stuff listed on their website, you're probably talking to a Nigerian uncle who has a wealthy king uncle who's in prison that's going to need $1,000 and you can become a millionaire. There's something going on. You should also know the company's history. Have an idea where they started, what they were doing, and how they got to where they are now. So a couple decades ago now, I worked for Sprint Nextel, and now it's T-Mobile. But way back in the day, I didn't know that it started off as a railroad, and then they started selling access to the telephone companies for telephone wires, for telegrams way back in the day. And that's how come you could hear pin drop in the 90s and all this other stuff. So, you know, this is about setting yourself apart from everybody else that's going to come in after you and every single person that came in before you. And write down questions about the company. Hey, why did you guys do this? Or why do you do this? What about these services that you offer? Can you explain to me what this is? You know, you want to understand, you are interviewing this company more than they're interviewing you. Your mindset going into these job interviews needs to be that you are selling your services, your ability to produce to this employer at such a high rate that they are going to pay you at this high rate at the top end of the spectrum because you are so good. You've differentiated yourself that much from your competitors, okay? You have to have the mindset that you are seeing whether this company is worthy enough for you as a vet walking in that door every single day that you go to work. Write down questions. If you're, my rule of thumb's always been, if I'm asking questions and speaking 20% of the time during the interview, I'm probably going to get that job. If I'm sitting there talking the whole time, I'm probably not a good fit. 80-20. Pete, what's your feedback on any of this stuff?
I just wanted to bear in mind that this is all stuff that you do offline, that you do before you hit the interview. So it's not, there shouldn't be a sense of urgency about it, so that you can be more thorough, of course. But those are all spot on. These are the things you want to know about a company, and definitely prepare yourself going in there so that you don't look like you're fumbling for those questions. There's questions that you're going to have in your head. You should have them in your head about that job, about that position, about the work group, about any of those things. So there's no excuse for not, or there's no reason for you to not have those questions when you walk in there. That makes sense? So yeah, just to underscore that. But yep, knowing the company, you don't have to know it at an MBA level, but you should certainly know those five or those four boxes: vision, mission, services, and history. And there's no reason not to.
This is stuff. Even if you're a guy who's going to be plumbing somewhere, you should know these things. You know, at least I believe so. And if you do, chances are, especially if you're in the trades, the guy walking in behind you is probably not going to be that well prepared. And if the guy appreciates that, you took some time to look into his company, he's probably going to be a pretty good guy to work for. That's my guess. Anyway, that's what I've seen.
So, Chuck and Pete, we hammered on this quite a bit when we were doing this in person on Tuesday nights. But when you talk about the 5 to 10 questions, go over a few of them. And I don't mean to steal your thunder if it's further along in the deck, but can you go over some of the do's and don'ts for those questions? What kind of questions you should ask versus what you should stay away from?
So my opinion, and what I've done personally myself over the years, is I'll prepare literally 30 to 40 questions. It's stuff that I want clarification on. We'll get into a little bit more here in a couple other slides, where some of this stuff can come from. But it's like, for example, I was in sales for a really long time, and there was, my opinion, or I should say my philosophy, is taking a sales job was always to know what differentiates this company in the market, and why would I want to go and get my ass kicked every single day over the phone and in person when I would go out and about trying to solicit sales. And if I didn't see that I was going to be able to create value with the products that they sold, I didn't want to have anything to do with that company. So there's a lot of times in sales where you'll get these companies that they have the hokiest products or services that you've ever seen in your entire life, or it's just really bastardized in the marketplace. If you understand sales life cycles as far as inception and the retirement phase and consolidation, all these other things, you want to understand the positioning in the market, the products that they've got, how it differentiates from any competitors that are out there. You also want to know what their product managers have in the pipe. So if they're like, hey, this is kind of worn out now, we're going through a revamp in the next X amount of months, we expect to have this launch at this time. Right now we're doing pre-sales, or you want to understand those types of things. And you can look at that from a sales perspective, but if you're in operations, for example, you're going to have very similar questions to develop. There's a guy that I know in town here that they created a safety position for him for a distribution company, and he wanted to know, what he's walking into. Is he going to walk into something where, they just need to retool a few things, or develop the whole thing from soup to nuts? So, when it comes to the services, you can really get a lot of these questions answered on the front end. And, the mindset is that if you're walking in asking, begging, on your knees for a job, and you know, I got a little scratch on my elbow, looks like I was doing the wrong thing looking for a job, right? Ha ha, little vet humor there for you guys. But you know, that's the wrong mindset. You guys should be standing proud, knowing that you're going to add a ton of value to whatever you're looking at. And that comes from you asking great probing questions. You know, tell me why. Tell me, how come you guys do this like this? How does this set itself apart from everybody else? You know, like when you're in the, I was in the telecommunications business for quite a while. I mean, you're literally selling a fiber optic cable from A to B, and it's all ones and zeros at its most basic level. So, you know, what that company decides to do with those services is what determines whether you actually have a product that you can sell or not. And from this part of the conversation, you should be able to develop enough stuff. You know, if you're an HVAC guy, hey, what do? We do services. What kind of services? Commercial, residential? What is it? Okay, well, you know, how does your trip charge work? How does this work? How does that work? You know, there's a lot of different things that you guys can go into when it comes to this vision, mission, services, you know, history type of stuff. At least that's my take on there. Sorry, long-winded answer. Probably took up a little bit too much time, but that's where I see it. We got any questions coming in yet, Sue?
Nope. We do have some watchers out there, so hi to Chris. Christopher Van Pultz is on.
He doesn't count.
Sure, of course he does.
Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
no questions so far.
Okay. All right. Pete, anything else to add before we go on to the next one?
No, I mean, I guess one question that I always tell people they can ask, this is like a huge bonus feather in your cap kind of question. If you're looking at the person who you might be working for and they say, you have any questions for me? You say, yeah, say you hired me a year from now, how would you know you made the right choice? And it's kind of a question that's designed to blow them away, but it's not one that they can walk away from either. They have to tell you what they were looking for and basically tell you how you're going to do the job and know that you've succeeded. It's a great way to get a leg up on that and make a really strong impression using the opportunity that having to ask a question provides.
I like it.
Yeah, I'll say it again. If you hired me 1 year from now, how would you know you made the right choice?
There you go, guys. Write it down. Say it one more time, Pete. You should have that pen with you right now. You can hit pause and replay it later.
Purple pen. No,
Yeah.
If you hired me and 1 year from now, how would you know you made the right choice?
I like it. Okay, so research the field. This is something that I see with a lot of transition guys. One of my buddies just retired literally in the last 30 days as a sergeant major, and you know, Army, 30 years. What the hell does 2.0 me look like? What type of stuff can I do? So the research aspect is going to come from a lot of different sources, I guess. So, you know, I was talking to a guy up north here the other day. Same thing. He's getting ready to retire. These two guys actually know each other. They don't know that I know both of them. But you know, here's a master sergeant who sends me his resume, and he's like, "What the hell can I do?" You know, he was an AGR guy for over 30 years. He just doesn't know. And you know, a few things came immediately to my mind as far as what he'd be really good at, and operations management was the number one thing. The second one, everybody hates the guy, but it's the safety guy at work, right? HR might be a little bit more edgy on that, but you know, so if you're making a transition from Army officer, senior NCO, or even, you know, you're part of the E4 mafia, you gotta have a you know, an idea of what you want to do 2.0 you. So once you land on those things, you know, whether it's HVAC or professional bowler or whatever it happens to be, you should know the trends in the marketplace that are out there. When you're doing your research, you use the evil Google to find that stuff out. There's a lot of trade publications. You know, don't be afraid to subscribe to actual magazines. I got a stack of them over my shoulder right here. I read through this stuff all the time. You'd be surprised when you get stuff in print media. It's typically more advanced, I guess, than some of the stuff that's on the internet where they're, not paying a guy to write for them professionally. So significant news, things that pop up, could be current events. So, let's say some new regulatory thing comes out and you want to go into the finance world, you should know about that. The government is pretty bad at making stuff happen on an expedited manner. So like when we did TRID for the mortgage industry here about a year ago now, we knew about that for 3 years out. So, if you sit down with a software development company like I was in and talk about, hey, what impact is TRID going to have on you guys? It's probably a good thing to write down some questions on. Professional publications. If you're getting into project management, program management, even if you guys, we got a couple guys that are like into blacksmithing and gunsmithing and stuff. Get those publications. Doesn't matter what it is. And if you ask me, the best research or worst research, kind of like golf swings out on the golf course, right? Either get really good info or really bad info on how to make those things work. But your friends that are in that field should give you a real good insight as to what to do. And oftentimes those guys will tell you what the blind spots are out there. They'll make sure that your 6 is protected, typically speaking. So develop questions off of these things right here. Pete, what else you got for research? Anything else to add?
No, if I could, just to be redundant, but it wouldn't really add. So you touched on it really well. It's assumed that that's your field, so you're going to be knowledgeable anyway. To just get out about trends and things like that, where that company and those trends cross.
So be flexible. So this is something that you may have to really open your mind to. Okay, so when you're going through this discovery process, this is pre-interview stuff. Okay, be flexible as to what it may take. Even if you were, active duty for 24 years, first sergeant, all that stuff, and you're getting ready to do a career change, you may have to be open-minded enough to go backwards and become like an analyst or something for a little bit until you can creep your way back into that management. I've seen this happen a lot with these younger Army captains that we get. I mean, we've had a big slew of them here over the last couple of years that are at that 28, 30-year-old mark. And, we're talking about guys that are very accomplished Army officers, West Point, HUA, Ranger, Jump Masters, CIBs, all that stuff. Yeah, and they've been company commanders, or they get their field grade, they become a staff officer or whatever. And they got this mindset that they're very accomplished. And from a military perspective, that's 100% true. But one thing that happens out in the civilian world is I like this term, you're not ETSing, you're making a new PCS somewhere else. And there's new requirements at that duty station. So it's almost like, if you were going from the Army into the Air Force or the Navy, there's a whole new language to learn. There's a whole new set of protocol to learn. There's all of these other things. So it's not much different than that, like a branch change or whatever. But, there's no uniform standards, there's dress standards, but you can grow out your beard. You can do all of these things out in the civilian world. A few years ago, I had super long hair, but I cut that because it was appropriate. Sue, you remember those days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but be flexible when it comes to what may happen when you get into the interview. So at Accenture, for example, start dates, right? There's a junior military officer program, and that does include enlisted as well, but they do budgeting per quarter. Some quarters they have 0 opening headcount in some markets they'll have 7. So depending on where they're at in their hiring cycle, you have to be flexible on the start dates. So we've seen this come in plenty of times where these guys will get picked up on these amazing places to work, but they're like, I'm 4 quarters out from starting here. And it's like, well, now put that thing on hold, reserve it. Let's find you something for the next 12 months. So be flexible on your start dates. Be flexible minded when it comes to income ranges. So, this one turns into a slippery slope. Just know that there's a bell curve range, okay? And you got 80% of people in the middle at a pretty high rate. And then you've got these outliers, 10% on the left, 10% on the right. And, that's the upper end spectrum. If you can justify why you are a, $400,000 guy or a $40,000 guy compared to a $20,000 guy, you better have that bingo card stacked in your favor quite a bit. So be flexible, and when you're chasing the paycheck, you're going to start losing happiness. So just be open-minded to income ranges. Now, I get it when you go from $12 an hour to $13.25 an hour. I get that. That's a little different. So I'm talking usually a little bit on the higher end of the spectrum. Travel schedules, even if you're doing local HVAC service work, or you're running a truck doing pressure fit hoses for hydraulics, you're probably going to have to be open-minded for a travel schedule. You might be working 410s, or you might be working 7 days a week, 5 hours a day, who knows. So on call, who knows if you got to travel out of state. Just be flexible, be open. Always put yourself in a position where you have the ability to say no before someone else tells you no. Okay? So shift work, you never know. I know in the medical field, you get these nurses that all of a sudden they get call, and here in Minnesota, that beeper starts going off at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. That's probably not a fun response, but it's just part of that field as well. And make sure that you write down questions about these things. Now, a disclaimer on income ranges, okay? You should be able to do enough digging ahead of time to understand what that income range is. Rule number 1 in negotiation, never go first. Rule number 1 in negotiation, never go first, okay? So that being said, you should feel comfortable enough walking in the door where you don't have to discuss income range, and never discuss income range on your first interview, ever. Let the employer, the hiring manager, bring this stuff up. And if they ask you, what is your income range? You can say, I did some digging on the internet, and this looks like it's the appropriate range for me. But if you wouldn't mind letting me know what that budget is for you guys here, because some of this shit that's on LinkedIn or Glassdoor, it could be $50,000 to $250,000. You just never know, right? But a safe way to just ask them is, what is the budget for the range here? And they have that number written down in HR somewhere. They have an upper and a lower end, and they have an ideal higher range, okay? So that goal of that employer is to find the highest qualified, most productive candidate for the best budget possible. That's just how it rolls. Pete, Glassdoor, what's Indeed, somewhat LinkedIn. What else are some good stuff to kind of do a little digging for income ranges and other suggestions on what to cover here for
Oh,
flexibility?
you can just Google. You can Google it. You'll get dozens of different salary calculators based on where you live, and just type in a zip code, and you can get that for you. And just bear in mind that if you're looking to travel or move, that different income levels for the same job, almost the same company, will vary depending on location, and that's okay that they do that. They're not trying to rip you off or anything. But just keep that, just tell, if that comes up, oftentimes companies are trying to gauge, they would say, we don't want to waste your time. We have a predetermined range. And if you're outside that range, then there's no way to, there's no point to continuing this conversation. We just want to make sure that our budget fits your needs. So they put it nicely like that. And like Chuck said, just get what their range is. If it's doesn't meet your needs, there's no reason you have to work there. But again, just have that in mind. You're not actually in the chair yet. So this is all about prep. It's just things to think about.
So income range is going to vary significantly from New York City and San Francisco to Duluth, Minnesota. They aren't even going to be similar. So that's where those ranges get wacky. But, maybe you got a buddy that works in the company and, they can save you a lot of research. And you never know, your buddy might even be low. Never know. So you don't know until you get the offer letter. And there's a lot of steps between now and then.
That when you talk about income range, keep in the back of your mind what you'd like, knowing your worth, but also know what you absolutely need. And what you need is not necessarily what you think you're worth. It is what you need to pay your bills and have a little extra pocket money for whatever. So if you can survive on, X amount, then that needs to be your low bottom range, not twice that just because you think that's what you're worth. So you do need to know what you absolutely have to have so that there is room for negotiation.
Nice. Okay. Probably move on. So team orientation. So I've done other videos on this 5-role thing. I just broke it down. I'm not going to get into it because that could be another 10, 20-minute discussion. So you should be able to size up these hire managers as to what they are on these high-performing teams. These aren't going to be as evident in the civilian world as they are in the military. It's just, at least that's my experience. The strange thing about every vet, I would say after you're probably active duty for about 2 years, you're pretty good at being all 5 of the things. And that's what makes us a little on the dangerous side. But you don't want to have this discussion, but you'll hear hiring managers say, I'm a hands-off leader, or I hire really good people that get shit done for me. Or, you can ask, you can say, hey, who's the smartest one you got on your team? Who's your go-to when you got to get stuff done? I mean, you just answered the nerd and the lieutenant thing. You got someone around here that throws whoopee cushions under desks or whatever, threw a 70s reference in there for you. Don't ask them who beats people up or whatever. But that's something for down the road when you get a little more ingrained in there. But if you've been around for a while, and you're the person that always has to be the lead, or you are the nerd or the enforcer or the joker, just know that you may have to rebrand the way you operate every single day. So another important thing that I've always asked is, I want to know this person's leadership style. If they want to sit there and have a 7:30 a.m. pre-work phone call and then a 5:30 after work phone call in the office, and then they stick you in traffic so you can't get to your family or the gym or whatever your thing is after work. You want to know these types of things. If they're like, oh no, hey, once I get you up to speed and you hit your quota or you get your production done, you're free to go. Doesn't matter if it's 2 in the afternoon or 10 at night. It doesn't matter. Ask these questions. You want to know if you can actually work with this person, because the last thing you want to be doing is looking for another job in 30, 60 days. At least that's my opinion. You want to know what the team support's like. I think that's one of the things that's really valuable, especially when you're transitioning, is there's going to be a lot of stuff, back when I don't know what the Air Force told you guys, Pete, but They told us there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way. You know, and it's the same thing in the civilian world. You could, you know, I was in telecom sales for quite a while. You know, you go from one company to the next, it's night and day different between the two companies. So you need to know who you can go to for the ordering system or for product knowledge, or, you know, the nerd that's going to come with you to know if, you know, they're going to screw up your orders when you put them in. You need to know what kind of team support you've got standing with you and behind you and in front of you. And then another thing that I think is extremely important is you have to explain that you're an adaptive person to high performing teams. If you sit there and you leave that up for, you know, question whether, you know, angry vet guy with the big beard who's, you know, 7 foot tall and 400 pounds that looks like a gorilla, you know, they might get a little intimidated by you. But if you're like, hey, you know what? I was on this high performing team over at this place when I was over here. We were very successful doing this. These hiring managers need to know that you're going to fit in, and you have to give them some examples of when you've done that. So make sure you write this stuff down so you can tell that as part of your story. Pete, anything else on, or Sue, on team orientation?
No, I think getting that in your head as part of your prep plan is a good thing to do.
Yep, and I think you know, you actually you gave a really good example, Chuck, with your 7 foot, you know, big dude, is that whoever is conducting the interview is going to look not only at your skills, but also the way that your mannerisms, because they want somebody that's going to mesh with their current team, and so you don't want to come off as really aggressive, or so giving examples of high performance in the past and showing that you're a team player is a good way to show that you can mesh with a team.
So I've referenced this in the past, I think, on these. I saw an article, it was about a decade ago, in CIO magazine, and they did a survey. It was thousands of CIOs in the country, and the number one response as far as what do CIOs look for people that work for them, and it was actually the ability to work on a team above all other things. So you would think that these super nerds, typically a CIO is a very, very highly skilled technician, at least once upon a time, you'd think that they would be looking for that as their key attribute. And competency is not it. It is how well do you fit on the team, because, you know, you get that cancer on the team, you get that one negative attitude, and boom, your team is done. It's done. We've all had it. We've all had that little shit that, you know, we needed to out process. You know, it's usually this, you know, one of those E4 Mafia fellas, and they just aren't a good fit. And the second that they're gone, it's like a really bad pimple that finally got, you know, Dr. Pimple Popper. I saw that once. It was about made me throw up. But it's that, right? It's that infected pimple that's just got to go. So, you know, being a good fit is critical, and you should be able to give an example or two that's going to put this person's mind at ease. So write it down, make it part of your story, and don't be afraid to have 3, 4 examples, and whatever one you think fits, because every situation is different, use it. I think that's it on the here we go. Interview etiquette. This could be an entire hour long.
Yeah, and a fun one at that.
Yeah. So what do I do? What do I don't do? 15 minutes. If you're 16 minutes, sit in the damn parking lot. Don't be that creepy guy that shows up an hour and a half early and, you know, sitting in the lobby reading all the magazines. Just 15 minutes. It's a nice professional time. Dress code. You should know before you go what the dress code is. So if you're going in and you're going to go in and you're an ASE gold mechanic, technician, go in the appropriate clothing, show that gold badge off. If you're going in for an executive role, you should probably have a nice jacket on at a minimum.
Yeah.
No flip-flops, no jorts. Cover up your upper torso if you're female. Don't be advertising that shit. Nobody likes that. Know if you're virtual or in person. So, this Zoom stuff is going to be the norm for a while till this epidemic is done. So be prepared. Actually, you guys can probably see what's sitting in my corner behind me. When you're interviewing, you probably don't want that stuff sitting behind you. So go stick it in another room. Make sure that whatever's behind you is friendly for any audience. If you're a crazy cat lady with a cat crawler and you think that your person that you're interviewing with might have some dander issues, you might want to think about a different background. Right, Pete?
Yeah.
When it comes to excessive makeup, cologne, hoop earrings, I'm just thinking of my ex-wife. Don't be like her, okay? I mean, just calm it down. If you need cologne because you stink, take a shower. Save it for when you get back in your car or truck when you leave for the day. Trim that mullet up, make that shit look nice. I'd show you my son right now. He's 16, whatever. I'm not even gonna get into that. When you introduce yourself, grab a hand of your person that you're interviewing, COVID or not, shake it like a vet. Bring some hand sanitizer if you gotta unspread some of these diseases that are going around right now. But I'm gonna use her name. We have a vet named Renee. She'd come up and do this stuff and shake my hand. That upset me quite a bit. I'm like, grab my hand like a vet. And she almost put me down to the ground. So be like Renee, okay? Women can shake hands too, just as well as men. When you're interviewing, good eye contact, okay? Don't be like creepy with your eyes wide open and not break eye contact. Reasonable amount of eye contact. These well thought out questions, as far as I'm concerned, you can't have too many questions. Ask questions appropriately as the time dictates. Be respectful. If that interviewer says, we got 30 minutes, that's it, or I've got 15, I'm running behind, be respectful. You can circle back with them for interview 2.0. You don't have to do everything on day one. And then, one thing that I always like to do is confirm the day before that we're still on, because you know what? Shit happens, Murphy's Law, right? You just don't know. You got a project that goes south if you're the IT director, and all of a sudden you work the night before, or your guys all work the weekend and you're taking Monday off or whatever. You need to do that for everybody's sake, is confirm the time the day before, or at least early on in the day of. So I like the day prior personally. What else, Pete, should we throw in there, or Sue, on etiquette?
Well, your job is going to be to interview. Your job is going to be to get that person to like you, because their job is to figure out why you're not suitable for the job so they can get on to and find the ideal candidate. So if you navigate that gauntlet and come out on top, great. But one of the ways you're going to do that is to get that person to like you. So find out who they are and get to know a little bit about them. And that's what LinkedIn does. You can even maybe find them on Facebook too. And find out what they're like. That way you can kind of mirror their behaviors and become the person that they're likely to relate to better. Again, this is all prep. This all happens before you walk in the door.
Yeah. If you can find those common threads, you want to be working with like-minded people. I've had interviews before where people were more curious about my ability to coach 10 and 12-year-old girls on a soccer field than they were about my ability to lead a bunch of Army knuckleheads back in the 90s, right? I mean, if you can motivate girls to score some goals and not cry, it's a pretty big accomplishment as far as leadership goes. Because I'm a big, mean guy, you know? So, you know, if you find those things, you know, maybe this person's in a pet rescue thing or does some veteran advocacy somewhere, you know, things that interest you, just ask questions and don't, I've seen this when I've been on sales calls before with younger guys, don't pretend like you know about shit when you don't know about it. I saw this one guy just hang himself one day talking about a fish on a wall. And I'm like, dude, that's not a northern over there. You know, I know what the hell that looks like. I pulled a lot of them out of the lake. So, you know, it's no problem to ask that person when you're, you know, making small talk for a minute or whatever, you know, but don't be the subject matter expert on something that they're the subject matter experts on. So have some humility and maybe they can teach you something. You'd be surprised what people are into. Sue?
Put it plainly, for at least for all the Army guys out there that are listening, is don't be a sharpshooter.
Right.
And Chris wanted to add in with your great eye contact part, don't look shifty.
Yeah, right. True statement right there. We went a little over on time from what I was hoping to go, but I think we covered the subject pretty well.
Yeah.
Anything else to add for the evening? No?
Just guys, think about you know, I think a lot of people they target these big companies because they know or they assume there's going to be a place for them. And that might be the real false reason behind this target fixation. You have no idea how vast, deep, and broad the job market is. There are companies you've never heard of that are probably looking for all kinds of talent. There's tons of opportunities out there. So don't get target fixated. There's a large high-tech, innovative manufacturing company in Minnesota that has a number and a letter as their name. I'll leave it at that. I personally have worked there, and I would not recommend them. I think they're very difficult to work for, and people always run around scared of the next layoff. So, yeah, don't be a slave.
Chase happiness.
Keep your options open. Yep.
Yep. All right. I think that's a wrap then, Pete. That's a good way to end it.
Right on.
All right. Thanks for joining, guys. Feel free to write some questions in there. We'll do our best to respond to them. And keep inviting more vets here so we can keep this program, we want to expand this and get the rest of these vets here that need this information. That's the key here, is we want to get this information out so we can help guys get back to full employment. They deserve this help. They'll never admit it, but they deserve this help. So yep. That's it from the soapbox today. All right. Have a good week, guys. See you next week. See you the next Tuesday. I want to say the bad stuff there.
A week from now.